Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from the WDET studios, Detroit's NPR station, sponsored by the Ford Foundation and a content partner to BridgeDetroit.com. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Givens-Davidson.
Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people on the east side of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. Today, we are happy to welcome for the first time Noah Urban. Noah serves as the co-executive director for Data Driven Detroit, a nonprofit co-op that seeks to provide accessible, high-quality information and analysis to drive informed decision-making. Noah Urban, welcome to Authentically Detroit.
Thank you for having me.
We're super excited to have you. How is everybody doing? It's been a gray and cold couple of days. How is the day finding y'all?
It's a gray day, but, I'm just glad that it's spring and this won't last always. So, they say trouble won't last always.
Come on and preach it.
Won't last always. And I'm waiting for warmth, and I'm going to New Orleans tomorrow.
Hey!
So I'm escaping this, and hopefully I will come back to a balmy Detroit.
Ooh, it was balmy in New Orleans. Noah, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Just spent a week actually in Miami a couple of weeks ago. So the cold, it is what it is, but diversity is the spice of life in terms of weather.
I'm telling you, I just got off a plane Sunday night from New Orleans, a nice and sunny 84 degrees New Orleans. And I come back to this. I'm depressed. I need the sun to come back. Like yesterday, and yesterday was only Monday. In the middle of the day, I lost all energy to just keep going. I just had to stop for a minute and just plop across my bed and just okay, just it's okay, because we got 4 inches of snow on Monday in the city of Detroit. What a crazy week.
Maybe it's like a curse or something. When we flew back, we actually got the same thing. It was like snowing the same day we came back. It was April 1st, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So we should let people know when we coming out from tropical places, because they think we're bringing snow back.
Yep, exactly.
And I'm actually blaming you. When I think about your itinerary, I understand the cause.
Yeah, I'm trying to tell you. Listen, it's time for Hot Takes, where we run down some of the week's top headlines in the city of Detroit. For Hot Takes, serious liability issues. Detroit faces onslaught of lawsuits for wrongful convictions. Donna, what say you?
Well, this article really caught my eye because every once in a while you hear about a wrongful conviction and somebody spent, way too long behind bars, and you think, wow, that happens too often. But in point of fact, Detroit has 17 ex-exonerated prisoners with pending federal civil rights lawsuits. And just the 6 alone that they've been able to calculate are for $625 million for 133 years spent in prison. 133 years combined.
Wow.
Right. 5 people, 133 years. So that's on average 25 per person, if my math is right. Mm-hmm. If it's not, you have time to correct me. But I think, it's about 25 years per person. That should have been the headline. 17 people who are exonerated, who are waiting, but there's more. So it's going to be expensive. In fact, the $625 million, a lot of times they negotiate those dollars downwards, and usually people settle because it takes so long to get a government payout. But they start with Daryl Siggers, who spent 34 years in prison for a wrongful conviction.
Oh my gosh.
And it makes you sick reading this. Also makes you sick when you hear the Detroit Law Department declined to request it, but that the Corporation Counsel, Interim Corporation Counsel, hopefully not for long, Chuck Ramey says that he does not consider these wrongful convictions. He has a different term for it. I want to come up with it.
He's funny. He has a lot of different terms. His name has come up on this show a few times within the last few weeks.
He says I've got to find it. It's a different term. And while I'm looking for this term, I should have had it up. It's just so crazy to me that that basically Ramey is saying, well, no, just because they got exonerated, we don't necessarily agree with the reasons for for them being released, but they were released. And so all we can say is basically that we're not going to acknowledge that they were wrongfully convicted. So he's unwilling to even give them that. It's a concern of mine that 17 people have cases, and there are many, many more people in the making, because that speaks to something that's very broken. What price is your life worth? Like, 133 years, $625 million, you can't get those years back. And they're going to negotiate that down. And then you have Corporation Counsel, who is really speaking like a defense attorney for the city, who's saying basically, it's probably not that bad. And this is him having a conversation with the police commission. I will find that term, but I just want to say that the story should have led with the enormous loss in life and potential of people that our criminal justice system did not treat well. And I'm concerned about them, and I'm concerned about the fact that there are many, many other people who are going to be treated in the same way, especially when you have a city which is even questioning whether these people were treated incorrectly. And we know that there have been police officers who've been convicted of crimes, and some of the reasons these people have been released is because these police officers who have functioned like gangsters on the public dime have been framing people for various crimes. And so their evidence has been tossed out. It just speaks to brokenness.
And I'm wondering about the budgetary implication of these wrongful conviction lawsuits, and if the city decides to sell, how much are we budgeting for the allocation? We know that last year, in 2021, the number was around $12 million, a little over $12 million that the city had to pay out for these kinds of lawsuits. And so, again, it's budget season here in the city of Detroit. In addition to us, sort of interrogating why and how often these wrongful convictions take place in our city and in our county. Let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the budget allocations. Go ahead.
I found the quote. Some people call them wrongful incarcerations. I call them reverse convictions because it's not always at all clear there was a wrongful incarceration, Ramey told the police board. What is clear is that somebody at the prosecutor's office has decided to reverse a conviction, which is, and I'm speaking in public, so I want to be a little careful, but we have significant concerns about some of the decisions made to reverse these convictions.
We're playing semantics on somebody's freedom and humanity, and I just think, and I guess that's a lawyer's job, but
I don't know if I think it's a corporation's counsel's job to question whether or not these convictions.
Yeah, not corporation counsel.
Yes, I mean, you're representing the city of Detroit, the citizens of the city of Detroit, and it's so important for us to remember that's what Corporation Counsel does. And I believe the citizens of the city of Detroit have a public interest in making sure that we are not wrongfully incarcerating people, even if you believe in your head. And I know so many times, even when people are released, there are police officers and others who maintain, well, they were still guilty. There's people who continue to say that despite an abundance of proof. But the Corporation Counsel, who is acting on my behalf and your behalf and anybody who lives in the city, has to be representing citizens who don't want to see this happen and also don't want to be stuck with the bill. So my question is, can we cut police budget to reflect, have some penalty in the police budget? When you keep on providing false evidence, there's going to be a budgetary impact on your department. They've done it with schools. They've said, hey, you know what? If your school is not producing good test scores, we're going to cut your budget. But it never comes back to policing. I think that there has to be a consequence to the department, to the officers. And I know there's qualified immunity concerns where you cannot sue the individual officers, but something needs to happen to stop these injustices from moving forward.
Yeah, and I need your Detroit News password because it's this story is paywalled, so I couldn't access it. So really want to dig my teeth into it. That was an article by the Detroit News. Everybody.
I will share it with you.
Thank you. City Council approves 2022-23 budget priorities, ARPA spending. We had a conversation with Councilwoman Latisha Johnson, representing District 4, about this budget amendment that they sent to Mayor Mike Duggan. Take a listen. Joining us today on Authentically Detroit is Councilmember Latisha Johnson, representing District 4 in the city of Detroit on the east side. It's where Donna lives. Latisha Johnson, the last time we talked to you, you were running for office. Now you're a council member. Welcome back to Authentically Detroit.
Thank you so so much. Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so glad that you're here. And I live and work in District 4. So it's home, it's work. And so we are so proud of you, Latisha, for representing us. A lot of exciting things have been happening at the council table lately. Most recently, you passed a budget amendment and sent it to the mayor.
Yeah, yes. And the budget amendment includes an appropriation of $2 million for a comprehensive master plan update. Now, for the avid listeners of this podcast, you know that we had the director of planning and development on a couple of weeks ago, and that's the exact number that he said it would take for the city to update its master plan. Latisha, talk to us a little bit about how that came about.
Yes. So on my staff, I actually have a young man who comes from the planning and development department, and we collectively recognize how valuable, how important it is for a master plan update to happen, because we know that there are residents throughout District 4 and throughout the city that are just wondering where their neighborhood stands in all of this, because we continue to hear about planning studies. We continue to hear about neighborhoods that were selected for the strategic neighborhood funds. And, you know, so many residents question, okay, what's happening in my community? And we thought it was extremely important to answer that question by supporting a master plan update. We've gotten a lot of feedback from various organizations throughout the state supporting an update, just realizing how important it is. And so we just wanted to make sure that all residents feel as though they are a part of moving their neighborhood forward and being a part of the city and the city planning process.
I remember a few years ago having a conversation with Angie Brown, who's the executive director from the Michigan Association of Planning, and she talked about the significance of a master plan. And there were many others who talked about the fact that it's really important. The master plan helps dictate how HUD and other federal dollars are utilized. Isn't that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
So if there is no master plan for your area, there's no real framework for reinvesting in your area and addressing the needs that are priorities for the residents as well as the city of Detroit. Would you say that's the truth?
That is true. And so folks who know me know that I'm all about inclusivity. And I think it's extremely important for everybody to know and understand the direction that the city really is looking to move their community in, and for their neighborhoods to be a part of this plan. And so it was vitally important for us. So we had internal conversations with the Planning and Development Department to understand what it was going to take, even if it was just to start the process in updating the master plan. Right. And so that's why we were very intentional about appropriating $2 million that we had to move from somewhere else within the budget to support even starting the process, so that residents know that we value them, that we value all of our neighborhoods, and that we want to see collective development happening throughout the city of Detroit.
And so this would mean some planning activity on part of the government in every single neighborhood in the city of Detroit.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we talk really quickly about timeline? We know that this budget amendment that you have sent back to Mayor Duggan has increased his budget, and he has an opportunity to either veto it or accept the council's budget amendments until April 21st. What do you want residents to know leading up into that decision date?
So number one, I just want to clarify something. So we didn't actually increase the budget. We just shifted some dollars from an area that we thought was maybe not as significant of a priority as this is. And so we want residents to know that, you know, collectively, council is moving forward and working together to make sure that all of our neighborhoods have a future, that our residents know and understand what that future is, and that our residents can be involved in the planning process for their neighborhood.
So the dollars that you shifted, I believe about $1 million was shifted from demolition and $1 million from police cadets. Are those the dollars you're talking about?
Yes.
How many dollars do we need to invest in demolition? It seems like every single source of funding has a demolition line item in it. And I'm trying to understand that. And, with the police cadets, I know that's part of the Summer Youth Employment Initiative, usually at least, or year-round summer youth employment. And there are other resources to support that activity, aren't there?
Yes, there certainly are. There are some ARPA dollars that will support that effort. And to answer your initial question, that around demolition, so we've been asking ourselves that same question. Of course, I believe I'm a proponent of addressing or remediating blight differently than demolishing properties, whether they're commercial or residential. I think we can repurpose properties. I think especially the $95 million in ARPA that we have allotted for blight remediation that is looked at, currently is planning to be utilized for commercial blight remediation, and I'd love to see those dollars utilized to help improve those commercial properties as opposed to demolish them. And I think, those are some conversations that we will likely have in the near future with the administration, because several of us are saying, okay, I think we've earmarked enough dollars for demolition, and we have to start looking at improving properties within the city instead of demolishing everything and then starting with a blank slate and trying to figure out where we go from there.
And then there's no plan in certain neighborhoods where you're demolishing because there's no master plan. So it's just going to sit. And I want to return to the question about the master plan, if you don't mind, because it seems like Orlando interviewed the planning director, Antoine Bryan, and I know you asked him some questions at the council table. And he seemed to suggest that this master planning process was not a top priority for the city of Detroit. Do I have that right? And if so, what is the argument for not prioritizing the master plan?
So what I gathered from our conversation is that the city has been focusing on doing deeper dives in these planning studies and being able to engage the community around the planning studies. And for a lot of us, the challenge is the neighborhoods where we have not done a planning study, the neighborhoods where there is no strategic neighborhood funds that is addressing that particular community. Because as I stated, we want to make sure everybody is included and that everybody feels included in this process and not excluded, because a lot of times people talk about, we pick winners and losers as it relates to neighborhoods. And we see, the neighborhoods that are vocal, that are always, I shouldn't say always, but a lot of times are identified as neighborhoods that we're prioritizing. And it just makes people feel left out. And we certainly don't want that to be the case. And so, we all felt as though a master plan update was necessary. And, we supported that in making sure that there were dollars in the budget to be able to address it.
All right. Now we will see what Mayor Duggan does, if he's going to accept this amended budget or veto it. And then we'll see what happens. The next fiscal year starts July 1st. Councilmember Latisha Johnson out of District 4, thank you so much for joining us here on Authentically Detroit.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great evening.
And thank you for representing our community.
Thank you.
Talk soon.
Bye-bye.
That wraps up Hot Takes. If you have pieces that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. Today, we're so happy to talk to Noah Urban, the co-executive director of Data Driven Detroit, for our featured discussion. Noah, first off, welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to have you. We got a gazillion questions for you, and we're super excited. But let's start with this news. Data Driven Detroit is now a worker-owned collaborative. Tell us how that came about, and tell us what worker-owned collaborative means and what it does.
Yeah, definitely. So D3, if you're not familiar with us, we do a lot of work similar to what a nonprofit organization does, but we're actually structured as what's called a low profit limited liability company, or L3C. So it's the definition for a company that has a social mission and tries to do good in the world, but is structured more as a private company rather than a nonprofit. And we decided to make this transition back in 2015 because the way that we were funding D3 and the way that we were keeping the lights on was by taking on a lot of paid project work. But that wasn't necessarily conducive to becoming our own 501c3. So when we spun out, our executive director at the time and my current co-executive director, Erica Rowley, actually ended up becoming the sole owner of Data Driven Detroit for a while. But that was never really the actual plan. We're a community asset. We do a lot of work for the community, and having D3 owned by one person wasn't really an ideal structure for a lot of reasons. If that one person decides that they want to, make a life change, choose a different job or whatever, then the company is kind of tied to that person, and it makes it very challenging. So we decided almost from the beginning to start exploring the structure of worker ownership. So having D3 become a cooperatively owned organization, all of the workers would own part of it. And so that way, if any one person went on to a different opportunity, the organization would still be around, it would be governed, and it would be much more collaborative than just having it in the ownership or direction of one person as well.
So do workers own different shares as a result of different roles in the organization? Or does everybody have an equal share?
So everyone has an equal share, actually. And everyone any employee is eligible. They just have to be with the company for about a period of 18 months before we can invite them, just to kind of get a sense of D3's culture and like the collaborative nature and the participatory nature of that. And then after that, anyone is eligible to be invited. And there's no financial commitment for anyone to join. It's really a tool that we want to have, to get people involved in D3's governance at a higher level, and then also for everyone to have an ownership in company decisions.
So when you say everybody is invited, everybody can be invited, but not everybody is invited?
Not everybody has to be invited. You don't have to be an owner to continue working at D3. So the goal is to extend ownership invitations to everyone on the team, but some people may decide that they don't want to be an owner for whatever reason.
So everybody can be an owner, though?
Yes, everybody can be.
Okay. Because I was wondering how you get around issues around equity, whether it is race, gender, LGBTQ, whatever it is that you're doing. How do you get around issues around equity if only certain people are allowed to stay and become owners? And do you have a diverse staff workforce?
We have definitely been trying to do a lot more to improve the diversity of our staff. We've been working a lot with, initially, a lot of our hiring in the past was done just by reaching out to our networks. And because a lot of people came from planning schools at universities, those networks tended more to be white, more affluent, more suburban, all of that. What we've been trying to do recently is be much more intentional. We actually engaged a couple of consultants who kind of reviewed our hiring process and offered different recommendations that we could take. So some of the things we were already doing, like making sure that we were redacting names and institutional affiliations from resumes just to remove any unconscious bias. So that one we were already doing. One of the recommendations they gave us also was to work on hiring a recruiter that could tap into networks that we wouldn't normally be able to access. And so we tried that as well. And our past few candidate pools have been really diverse and much more reflective of the community. Trying to serve.
I want to go back to that question, though, because when you remove names and everything like that and affiliations, that's a kind of colorblind way to move forward. I'm wondering if you can get to equity by being colorblind, or whether or not you have to have some intentionality around we're going to work hard to diversify. And if so, what that would look like. I mean, this is an exciting possibility, but it feels to me a lot of times when you see these worker-owned cooperatives, they tend to be not as inclusive of everybody in a community like Detroit. Is that true?
It's definitely a risk, and it's one that we've been really cognizant about. And I think that's where adding the recruiter to that process really helped.
Okay.
That was where it allowed, because the redacting of the resumes actually helps us control our kind of internal implicit biases, but adding the recruiter who can actually go out and tap some of those networks more intentionally, that was what really allowed us to kind of start shifting that conversation.
Awesome.
More so.
Can you talk a little bit about what D3 actually does? Because I feel like some people may have an idea, but it feels a little bit removed from a lot of the work that we see going on in neighborhoods.
Definitely, yeah. And we do a lot, actually. So we function as what we call an intermediary organization. So a lot of the work that we do is designed to support other organizations that are providing direct services. So in our specific role, we're a data intermediary. So we try to go out into the world, all of that mess of data that exists out there, whether it's coming from the city, the state, the federal government, private companies, nonprofits. And we try to go out there, we try to clean it, centralize it, and actually make it so that organizations working on the ground can make meaning from it. And it makes it more actionable. So that's really the role we try to play. And we really the organizations we try to work with the most are the types of organizations that don't really have a lot of the resources or budget to have a data analyst on staff of their own. And so we try to work and fill that role. We partner with organizations on projects. Those can be very customizable. They have a really big range. Sometimes it's as small as a community organization needs a few maps to help facilitate a planning meeting. And we help them use data to create those maps, and then they can use that as like an engagement process in their neighborhood plans. Sometimes it's as large as this data set. Someone wants to create a data set that has never existed before, or that can only be gathered by, visiting or visiting a property manually. So we've done property surveys of the entire city of Detroit before just to understand what the conditions are of buildings on the ground. And that's, a very large undertaking that takes a number of months, lots of workers. So there's a huge range in the work that we do, but all of it, as you mentioned in the beginning, is really in the name of facilitating data-driven outcomes. We want to really try and help level the playing field for people who don't always have access to data to be able to get access to the same kind of data that a major corporation that has tons of data analysts can get.
Now, as I recall, we had a conversation. I don't know how long ago it was because COVID has thrown off my timelines, but I remember our last real conversation. You talked about the opportunity for you to do some data analysis for us. And there was a certain amount you would do every year for free. And then we'd have to pay you for anything above and beyond that. Can you talk about that relationship and if that opportunity still exists?
Yes, indeed. And that is actually one of our most commonly offered services. So we have a service that we call Ask D3. It's a community data request hotline. Anybody who has a question can send something into it, and it covers up to 2 hours of data work for free. It doesn't matter if you're a community resident. It doesn't matter if you're the executive of a large nonprofit. Send us that question and we will answer it. And that's available to everyone. We normally handle about, I would say, around 300 or so of those requests a year.
Wow.
From various people.
So sometimes I'm working on a grant proposal and I need some data.
Yes.
And I go to D3 and it's like, I don't know what to do here. It's confusing. It's not really self-serve, is it? It's self-serve for your data person, but for somebody like me, it can be complicated.
How are we democratizing it a little more?
Exactly. And so that's where we're working more in that direction through a couple of different ways. One is through data tools, which produce things in a bit of a more synthesized format. So we have a couple of those on our website, and all of the data tools we produce are free of charge too. For anyone to access. So we have a couple. There's our State of the Detroit Child tool, which has a lot of information about the conditions relating to kids and families in neighborhoods across Detroit and actually across all of Michigan as well. There's our housing information portal, which provides a lot of that same information for housing and property data. And that one's more focused on Detroit, but that, again, provides a lot of kind of quick summary statistics. And the neat thing about these data tools, especially if you're working in a neighborhood, is that you can go into them, you can draw your own geography, and you can get a quick data profile with like 2 or 3 quick steps.
And that's why we need a guide.
That's
Noah.
exactly.
The layers and the
trust
legends.
Trust and believe. I think I've tried. And the thing is, there's so much there that it's like, I don't know if I go in this room, do I push this one? Do I push this one? I wonder, we were talking at a leadership team meeting today about interns, if there's an opportunity for us to have somebody who you train and who's working with you to bring that information to us. Because again, as Orlando talks about data democracy, sometimes you don't have time. Now, we worked with you on one project.
Yes.
And we were trying to find out how many children were in a neighborhood under the age of 5. Do you remember that project?
I do, yes.
And
LEAP. Don't forget LEAP.
But according to this project, there were 0 children under the age of 5 in a neighborhood. And I was like, Noah, I've seen little kids walking through this neighborhood. So this number can't be right. Mm-hmm. And one of the great things you did was you came up with this amazing universe of data that you could pull from. Can you talk about where you get your data? Because it seems like you are the kind of person who really knows how to track a whole lot of things in ways that most people don't.
Yeah. And a lot of it ends up, we end up having to be really creative a lot of the time with what we try and go after. Because like you mentioned, a lot of the more commonly used federal data sources, they aren't really all that accurate when you start pushing them, like translating them down to a neighborhood level or a small geography level. And so then you start having to figure out, well, how can I triangulate and get at this? So for example, you are not able to find any kids 0 to 5 in this data set, which we obviously know is false. So are there other data sources that we can leverage that can maybe point at that a little bit more? So we get a lot of our data from the city of Detroit, which we know it's imperfect. There's a lot of challenges with the administrative processes, but if you start to layer them, you can get a decent sense of what's going on. We also try to get information from the state, especially the Department of Health and Human Services. They track, vital records files, so you can understand, well, if you're looking for the number of kids under 5, there were X number of births in this neighborhood over the past 5 years. That at least gets you to a decent understanding of the conditions, better than what you would get through just using the standard data sources.
Yeah, and that's important because of low responsiveness to the census, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And especially among some of the more vulnerable groups. And then people use that inaccurate census information, like the city is now in the process of suing the Census Bureau or something, saying, wait a minute, this data is inaccurate. But then you use that to decide where you spend money.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of, do you put a child care center here or a school?
It's a huge challenge. And it's actually one of the interesting things, like the American Community Survey data, it comes with margins of error. Yes. And if you look at the margins of error sometimes for like a zip code or a neighborhood, they're really big. Like sometimes you'll see like, oh yeah, there's 200 kids under 5 in this area with a margin of error plus or minus 150. Like that's a pretty big range that you can get into. And so, like you said, Donna, there's a lot of challenges that come with using the federal data. And so we do use it because sometimes it's the only data we have for certain things, but wherever possible, we really try to point to some of those other sources that, again, they're not perfect by any means, but help understand what's going on.
What about firsthand sourcing? One of the things that I learned while I was at ECN for the 8 years and undertaking 2 of our planning processes is that, we can put a map in front of residents and residents are going to add fidelity to it. They're going to say, this is wrong and this is right, or you missed this, or you did capture this correctly. I'm wondering if there is, any plan to provide an on-ramp for the average resident who cares about their neighborhood to be able to access and use this data, a glossary of terms, translation services, really democratize the tools so that residents, especially resident advocates, can use it to their benefit.
I think we're definitely hoping to move a lot more in that direction because ultimately, like the data that we provide is only as good as people actually use it. Like if it's not being used to inform action, then why are we providing the data in the first place? Yeah. So we're definitely hoping to move a lot more in that direction. There's a couple of programs that we run that are, I think, starting to nudge us that way. So one is, it's actually been dormant due to the pandemic, but we're hoping to start bringing it back more soon. It's our Civic User Testing Group, which is a network. Up before the pandemic, we had gotten it up to about 450 Detroit residents. They sign up, they receive a $5 gift card just for participating in the network and giving us their email address. And then we invite them to participate in tests of data tools that we provide or that the city of Detroit provides, and they receive a $20 gift card for participating in that test and giving us that feedback. So that's one of the avenues we've used to implement some improvements to our tools to make sure that resident voice is captured just in that element so that if we're designing something, it's for residents, that they're actually helping say like, yeah, you're doing a great job, or no, I can't understand any of this and you need to completely restart. We want to hear that feedback too.
Yeah.
It's really important to get that.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I want to allow you the opportunity to talk about some of the cool things that you guys got going on that you want people to know about. But I also got to, put this plug in for data centers like yours to partner with news media organizations to help cascade what the numbers are saying and what the conditions are on the ground. I think that is really, really important. And Erica Riley, shout out to Erica, who sits on the Community Advisory Council for Bridge Detroit. We want to do more with you all.
And we want to do more with you as well. So, yes.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you guys got going on. Erica talked about a housing portal that's new. You talked a little bit about the State of the Detroit Child. Tell our listeners what they can expect if they log onto the website and how they can access this data, this wealth of information that you guys have.
Yeah, definitely. So the Housing Information Portal is the newer of the two data tools that we have, or the two main data tools that we have. It is essentially, it aggregates a ton of information from the city of Detroit, from different departments. So from the buildings department, from the assessor's department, from the planning department, all of these different data sets that are really fragmented and fractured. It takes them, it cleans them all, puts them in one place, and makes them easily understandable and comparable over time. And so you can understand at a neighborhood level, what are the different factors? Like how have people been pulling building permits in this neighborhood? How have sales prices been faring? What are vacancy rates? What's happening with vacancy rates? What's happening with code enforcement and blight violations? All of those different data sets are all in one place at a neighborhood level. There's also a search by property tool that we're in the process of revamping. If either of you have tried it, it's probably pretty clunky at this point. And I'm sure you know that.
Yep.
We're in the process of making it a lot better and a lot more effective. But that will allow you to look up for any property in the city of Detroit, basically everything that's happened to that property since 2009 that we have in our database.
Yeah.
Vacancy, tax foreclosures, sales, building permits, improvements, all of those things will be available and searchable by that point. Now, with the parcel tool, it's very specific in its user base. And we do actually require you to create an account to log into it because the information in it is so it's so powerful, and it has the potential for misuse by actors who might be looking to do less good with it, speculators and the like. So you actually have to create an account. It's free, but we do ask you just a couple questions like, who are you? Why do you want to use this tool? And if you're a speculator, then we have to review your account before actually approving it.
Would you say I'm a speculator? If
Donna,
you were filling that out.
No. If you're a for-profit organization or an individual.
You are an executive director of a nonprofit community development organization.
No, I'm just saying, there are, I think a lot of times people conceal their intent.
Exactly.
I've talked to a number of people who want to work with us and say, we're doing good things. And you find out that there's really some, we worked with one organization that was going to do housing with us. And I don't know if you remember this, Orlando, but they were going to do this housing. They went to the land bank, got all this housing, and we found out it was really a scam. And that's the challenge, is really figuring out and differentiating between the various folks in the community. But I think it's great that you have that tool. I think this one, and I tried using it as I recall. And one of the challenges is that organizations like ours, which are nonprofit, and don't pay taxes, don't always show up in some of the property databases. Have you seen that?
It is a big challenge. And it's actually, so this is where when I mentioned like imperfections in the data, when we're sourcing a lot of that information, it does come from the city assessor's office, and the processes that they use to update it are fairly opaque, and sometimes there's a big lag. We've noticed. So sometimes like an owner might not be updated for several years. And so what we're trying to do instead is bring in additional data sources that can help ground truth that information. So we're exploring right now what it might look like to try and acquire data from the Register of Deeds, which is much more authoritative in that source. It also comes with a cost, which is part of why we're trying to figure out what the best approach is. But we're trying to expand and make that much more
awesome.
accurate.
What is the difference between that and LandGrid?
So between the housing portal and land grid?
Yes.
So there's not a ton of difference in terms of just like the specific features of the products, but just different. They're streaming in different data
free.
sources. Yeah, the housing portal is free. That is one.
I'm like, that should have been the first answer. I was waiting for that answer. I'm like, let me help Noah out. It's free.
I was aiming for the politic answer.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, so it is free, and we did design this with a very specific goal of helping provide community development organizations in particular with a lot of data. So we went through a year-long user research process and did a number of interviews with local CDOs to really identify what specific needs they had. And then we tried to design the portal around what we heard during that process.
That's great. So I look forward to reconnecting with you and having you reconnect with some of my community development partners and reminding us of these features, because I remember being super excited, and then the pandemic hit and COVID brain. So I don't remember all of the details that I want to remember, but thank you for doing that for our industry.
Absolutely. And what I can also say too, just for your networks as well, we do in our current grant that funds the portal have a line item that covers trainings and for the tool and outreach and all of that stuff. So we want to get this used. So please
bring
share
in the
it out.
staff, bring in the Leap Fellows. Let's make it happen.
Yes.
Noah, thank you so much for joining us on Authentically Detroit today. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
All right. If you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. All right. It's time for shout outs. Donna Givens-Davison, do you have any shout outs?
I do.
All right.
I want to shout out the Skillman Foundation, starting with Angelique Power, but also Panitha Thurman and Lauren and others at the Skillman Foundation who have decided they are going to go out and listen to the community and allow the community to help shape how Skillman works with us in the future. It takes a lot of guts to open yourself up for input and scrutiny at that level. Some of you may recall that Angelique was on Authentically Detroit. I think she says 3 or 4 days into her job. And I asked her some tough questions and she responded. And she encouraged other people. She told everybody about these tough questions and encouraged them to do the same. And so they had a feedback session at ECN today. And indeed, there were some tough comments. I think all given in love. People want to see great things happening in our community. I want to also shout out D3. I think that I was just at a nonprofit group with assembly, and I heard nonprofit leaders talk about the threat of unionization and this fear of workers trying to seize power. And so the fact that you created a worker-owned cooperative really speaks to a commitment to justice principles that I wish more of our colleagues shared. So I want to thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that the model of co-executive directors is something that we all want to see. How does it work? And is that something other organizations want to move to in the future? I know that New is doing something similar to that in Ann Arbor, and it's kind of confusing to me, but I'm interested in learning more. So shout out to you for being innovators.
Yeah. Noah, you have any shout outs?
Kind of on the spot here.
Yeah, it's always on the spot. It's always on the spot. That's what we do here.
Let me think.
Yeah, well, I'll go ahead and give my shout outs while you think. I would like to shout out Kevin Ryan over at the Ford Foundation. He brought myself, Chase Cantrell, and Lauren Hood to the Ford Foundation's Detroit Working Group. These are folks that, community folks will never see, but are influencing and shepherding capital in our communities. And we got to have a real conversation about what equitable development looks like in the city of Detroit and what we want it to be. So shout out to Kevin for making space for us to have that conversation, and my friends Chase and Lauren who engaged in some radical truth-telling to, a chamber of power in our country that is philanthropy. So I really appreciated the conversation. You got your shout outs ready?
Not yet.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up this episode of Authentically Detroit. No one wants to shout out D3 and his staff and the worker owners that work there and everybody who uses the tool. That's
and
what we'll
Erica.
Yeah,
and
actually,
Erica.
That's a good one. Yeah, I'll shout out Erica because the amount of trust that she had in our team, taking something that she had poured so much of her own self and her passions into and being willing to trust, me as a co-executive director with additional responsibility and, roles in that organization, but also just all of the rest of our team with a role in stewarding and governing what will hopefully be a community asset that's around for a very long time. That's really impressive, and it's really rare. So shout out to Erica for being able to actually go through with that.
That's my girl. All right.
Yes.
We thank you so much for listening. We want you to catch the wave. See you next time.